Okay, as everybody is taking their seats, let me introduce myself. I'm Daunis Sauers, Associate Professor here at the Department of Political Science in the University of Latvia, and I will be moderating the second half of our discussion today when President Saakašvili will be taking short, sharp questions from the students. To introduce President Saakašvili, I'd like now to pass on the baton to the Rector of the University of Latvia, Mārcis Auziņš.
Your Excellency, President of Georgia, Mihaila Saakašvili, it's actually a great pleasure and honor for us to have you here at the University of Latvia, at the Department of Social Sciences of University of Latvia. Dear colleagues, dear friends, probably you know that we have this long-lasting tradition that all the presidents of Latvia are inviting their guests, world leaders, to the University of Latvia to share their experience, their vision about global and local events. And today we have a chance to listen to our guest, His Excellency Mihaila Saakašvili, about his vision about Georgia, Europe, maybe even broader. The title of the talk is From Failed State to European Democracy, Georgian Experience. I think we have some similarities in our history in the past and probably some similarities also in current developments, and I'm sure that it will be very interesting for all of us to learn experience of Georgia. Your Excellency, floor is yours.
Well, I'm really delighted to be here. It's the most privileged audience you can get in any country, and also, of course, in this beautiful, amazing nation of Latvia. Because it's always nice to talk to students, because students are not used by this idea of today. They're not spoiled by this idea that politics cannot change the world, politics cannot change the society. In fact, I think with all the changes in the world, the Arab Spring, all the upheavals and downbeat trends in the world, I think the main thing that we should get from our own experiences, from your experience as a nation, from our experience, that I think the main sense you get is the sense of history. In fact, I'm always a very optimistic person, no matter what. But my optimism in our case is based on reality. It's based on the reality that happened here in Latvia. And you know, once you are in this country where you always fight for every 0.5% in elections, and maybe sometimes life seems too difficult, maybe processes seem too slow, you can imagine that, you know, there are nations out there, like that of my nation, that can only dream of what you have achieved. You are already in NATO. Our nation has amazing dream of joining NATO. You are already in the European Union. We are just embarking upon the route of joining the European Union. In fact, you've managed to get somewhere where we can, you know, say, yeah, maybe we are saying we can, and the others who criticize us are telling us, cut this crap, you know, don't sell us this rubbish, you know, don't try to fool us. We will never get there, but you're already there. But that's exact sense of history. You are here, but then, again, you have new challenges, you have new important goals ahead of you, and again, you have new skepticism, new doubts, new hesitations, and another sense of history, another sense of perspective. We are unique in many ways. You managed to achieve a lot of things, but we're unique in this post-Soviet world because we are a country where there was entire change of generation. You know, absolute majority of our civil service is under 30. We have ministers, lots of members of parliament or prospective politicians that are under 30, because we've done absolutely crazy things in Georgia. We started reform 8 years ago, we were taking risks. And I think for taking risks, being young was very important, because you know, people, I notice when they start to say, in my field as well as in many other fields where we are wiser, we are more wise. When they say we are more wise, that means basically that's a code word for being less daring, less imaginative, less risk-taking. Actually, being wise is not being in any ways better. It's getting worse. And because without taking risks, you cannot get there. Without taking risks, you cannot achieve what is, seems to be absolutely unachievable things. For instance, you know, what we did in 8 years ago, Georgia, we fired the entire police force in one day, like this, you know, and police was gone, like everybody. We, over years, fired the entire tax service, entire customs service, entire almost 99% of government bureaucracy. We changed the whole, we decentralized the country. We just moved a few days ago parliament to another city, which is 2 hours drive from the capital. We brought up new cities of which nobody thought before. In fact, today we signed an agreement on twinning and cooperation between city of Jurmala and Lekcija. While Jurmala has always been, the first post-Soviet generation, Jurmala is a big name. And Lekcija was a non-existent name 2 years ago. It wasn't there, just there was some small place, but it was never a place. Now it's flourishing, amazing place. Just it happened to be that, you know, we happened to go there a few years ago, look at the place, liked it, started to develop it, and it developed much faster than we would ever imagine. Because we were taking risk. We didn't, you know, take time and get 3 years of feasibility studies, invite 5 years of expert discussions, they get another decade of architectural planning, then, you know, bring in or slowly get announce tender and things, and then meanwhile our life would have been gone. And we are impatient, we are, well, at least spiritually still young, and we wanted to get the result. We wanted while we are still young, not while we're still alive. And we got this place. Anyway, now we are building another city next to it called Lazika, and everybody's making fun of us, but half-heartedly, because they know that when we say something, we mean it. So we decentralized the place, we changed entirely the minority policy and approach toward people living in Georgia. But we didn't succeed in anything, but here are the results. And for small countries like us, you know, knowledge of whom does not come natural, benchmarks do matter. Georgia is the easiest place to do business. These are not my words, that's World Bank. In Eastern Central Europe, the post-Soviet world, in terms of easiest place to do business. We have, according to IFC, world's fastest customs procedure, world's customs company registration, fastest, world's fastest property transaction registration, world's fastest issuing of identity documents. According to Canadian Center of Law and Justice, based on the survey they've done on Transparency International, we have world's second best bureaucracy after New Zealand. We have we are one of 3 least corrupt countries in Europe, according to EBRD and the IFC survey. 9 years ago, 8 years ago, according to Gallup polls, 98% of Georgians have said to pollsters that they've encountered corruption firsthand. Now it's 0.1 consistently in every study. And even that I would doubt that it's, but it's 0.1, it's almost disappeared. This Georgia is a country where no policeman takes bribe, no minister takes bribe. A few had in the past and they're in prison or they had trouble. Many members of parliament were jailed, and since then they've changed their habits. They no longer take bribes. And I think these are the, you know, but we were, maybe you heard, but maybe you're too young to have heard it, but Georgia was the same thing to our part of the world as Palermo was to Western Europe, to America. Even today, half of organized crime bosses in Russia are Georgian. but Georgia is the safest country in Europe, according to European Union survey just presented yesterday. Well, we've been the safest country of Europe for several years already, and I can tell you that we are ahead of Iceland, Denmark in that. So, more important than these benchmarks, a mental revolution happened. The way how they look at state, at their role, at their responsibility. So in many ways, I think what Georgia has presented to the world, Georgia 10 years ago, Georgia now, its politics understood in a noble way can change the world. Well, and it's very important to understand what means to be an agent of change in post-Soviet world. If you are an average Russian, even living not far away from your borders, like somewhere in St. Petersburg, you always thought that free nations of the Baltic region, including yours, well, they were not a big example for Russia, because you were always a little bit extraterrestrial, a little bit strange, a little bit too upgrade, too upscale, too efficient, too disciplined, too nice. While Georgians were always wild, undisciplined, corrupt, criminal. Well, still nice people. I mean, they're good dancers and singers, but otherwise totally useless. And now, for the first time in many hundreds of years, we have created a modern state in the Caucasus, where it doesn't come naturally, because you know, even several years ago, one important West European leader confided to me, he forgot that it was us or delegation of Eastern Europeans who saw him and said, Caucasus, it's just a very wild place, criminals, robbers, all kind of bad people. And I think maybe it's better if Russia takes over and really governs them. That was the perception. And suddenly, we have the world's number one, world's number two, Europe's number one. And that Russia that had to govern us, according to that leader, world's number 147 in terms of corruption, world's number 127 in terms of business environment, Europe's one of the worst in terms of everything, criminal rate including, etc. Big challenge and big danger. As a result, 4 years ago, leader of that country of Russia, that's insignificant country between two of us, that somehow doesn't allow us to get close in many ways, in territorial, I mean. Of course, we are very close spiritually. Publicly swore that I would be hanged by different parts of my body, that Georgia would disappear from the map. They pledged total annihilation of my country. And look what happened. We are still around. We are still alive and kicking. We are still successful. 7% growth last year, 6.5% in crisis year previously, maybe 8 or 9% this year, 10% hopefully next year. Lots of new cities, lots of new developments, new airports, new roads, new universities, new infrastructure, and still country upbeat about its own future. So there was this thing when they were talking about Baltics. They were saying, okay, they were always strange, but in post-Soviet world, the rest, there are only two models. Yeltsin kind of drunk chaos with some democracy. Everybody can say what they want. They can also shoot each other. Everybody is corrupt. Everybody is crazy. Everybody is uncontrollable. Or everything should be controlled, like it was brought later by Putin. Of course, everything is still corrupt. Everything is still criminalized. But corruption and criminalization is under central control. You cannot be corrupt or criminal or your own. You need to be authorized and licensed to do that. That brings more order. That brings more predictability. But of course, in Soviet world, there can be no other model. Either this or that. And suddenly, this small country emerged, Georgia, and they said, well, we still have democracy, no matter who says what, but we have freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of elections, but the safest country in Europe, the least corrupt country, world's #1 corruption fighter according to Transparency International. Country is partially occupied, but still, you know, last week, former president, now whatever his position is, Medvedev, said that, by the way, you know, we should, first he said that Georgia is a small, insignificant, useless country, but they've done some interesting reforms. Of course, we are a big country, we cannot apply and repeat them. First, that was his first statement on television. 3 days later, he said in Russian Duma, well, Georgia is a country that has done very important reforms. I hate Saakashvili, but one has to say that it's interesting to observe it, and it's interesting to apply them and to study and apply them in my own country. Think about it. This big country had invaded many small nations in 20th century. They invaded you, and like in Georgia in the 90s, they've deported lots of Latvians. They took over, like other 2 Baltic countries. They killed your statehood for some time. They've invaded Hungary in 1956. They've hanged President Imre of Hungary. They invaded Czechoslovakia in 1968, deposed leader Dubček, ended Prague Spring and Czechoslovak independence. They invaded Afghanistan in 1979. They killed the president within 1 hour, and they plunged Afghanistan into decades of turmoil that is continuing until now. They invaded us in 2008. Before that, they did full-blown energy embargo 2005. We stayed without gas and electricity and heating. They did full-blown economy embargo in 2006. We couldn't sell our products. You know it from your own experience. We lost 70% of our market, like in 1 week like this. And then in 2008, they came in, and when American Secretary of State asked her counterpart, Condi Rice, her counterpart in Moscow, what's your proclaimed goal? He replied very calm, with you know, absolute calm of a reptile, full annihilation of a country. Full annihilation of a country, but that was my country. And 4 years later, they also swore to hang me and etc. 4 years later, I'm still around, totally intact in terms of different parts. But also my country, which is much more important, is around. And by the way, then the country that pledged to dismember and kill us says, by the way, we should learn from them how to rule our own country. Isn't this a miracle of history? Isn't it the amazing paradox of what a small country can achieve when it has will and when it has perseverance? That's why I'm telling you, don't be afraid of anything. Just go for the thing, and you will succeed. Thank you.
Okay, and we now open the floor to questions for President Saakashvili. So if you could, why don't we start off, we'll give the professor from Canada a word. So just over here, Professor Dreyfelds.
The question I have is, why do you think that Vladimir Putin dislikes you so much? It seems that that's one of the principal aspects of the relationship between Russia and Georgia.
No, I think it's, frankly, it's not true. It has nothing to do with our personal relationship. And in fact, I think he likes us too much. And he wants us back. And this was one of the myths. Oh, you know, that's not a small problem. That's a small personal problem. Come on, they want to get back empire. What small problem? Look at the map. If they get us, if Georgia falls, the whole Central Asia and Caspian will walk. They were selling this bullshit about personal dislike, and I irritate him to some naive Westerners for them to say, oh, there's a small problem. There is a big problem. They want to get Soviet empire back. And that means that they need to control the especially strategic countries. If you control strategic countries, then you control everything. A and B, as I said, they have problem now inside Moscow. Why Medvedev had to say he wants to imitate Georgian reforms? Not because he likes us, he totally hates us, I trust him. But the fact is that everybody around him saying, wait a minute, this country is very interesting. If their policemen are not corrupt, if they can build much better infrastructure than us with our oil and gas, what's wrong with us? That's a big problem. That there is a new model as an alternative emerging, and you know it's no longer at what they sell, well, the crap they sell in Russia today or anything. You know, 1 million Russians will come this year to Georgia as tourists. We introduce visa-free travel for them. And the 1 million stories will be told that not only we don't eat children, but we also are quite efficient society. And that's a big ideological issue. Because if this useless Georgia could perform, great Russia, it can perform 100 times better, especially because they're 100 times bigger. And that's I mean, we are managed by our own success, frankly. If we had been another failed state, maybe we would have been spared. Right now we are on forefront, and when they are trying to undermine us, they think they are undermining corrupt Western influence on their borders. Unfortunately, the West really doesn't know it, but that's what their perception is, and that's even worse. But that we are on our own, but we are representing in this battle what is a collective Western idea of efficient democracy, and that's the worst nightmare for any leader that wants to get back the empire.
Okay, there's a question over there. And if you'd be so kind just to quickly introduce yourself and make sure it's a question that's being asked, not a comment.
Okay, Mitrofan Slobodyan, Young Political Organization, Patrioty LV. My question about the conflict between Georgia and South Ossetia. Why Georgia was start with conflict? Thanks.
I don't know. There is no such thing as South Ossetia. There is a small region inside Georgia, where population was very ethnically mixed, and where there were people from which Russian troops entered in 2008. Entered after heavy shelling of several nights, after long preparation. At the moment when I was gone for holidays and I just came back, 80% of my main principal advisors and lots of our officers were gone for holidays because we're a normal country and we go in August for holidays. And they entered. But they entered, it was pretext, and they went after Tbilisi. They went to occupy capital. And when they entered, they told local population, which was predominantly ethnically Ossetian, we came to liberate you. And by the way, how strange, but most of this population fled with Georgian police. They just left the place, and they live 70. Do you know that 70% of, or roughly maybe, we don't count them, but majority of ethnicities that live in our refugee camps that emerged as a result of Russian occupation or Russian liberation, as they say, to liberate so-called South Ossetia and ethnically Ossetian? Do you know that there is no population left in Russian occupied areas? It's 6,000 people left. Nobody is left. Nobody wanted to be liberated. These are old people. And do you know that it's exact parallel with Latvian history when Latvians were deported? Because we had one big wave of deportation in the 90s when 500,000 people were deported from Abkhazia because this was the most Europeanized and the most promising region of Georgia in terms of getting fast to Europe. Well, our friends in the north knew it very well. That's where they hit us very well in the 90s. And then this time they thought that the easiest place to get to capital is through that direction from the north, using this South Ossetian issue. So, you know, every time when small country in the history got attacked by big one, do you think ever big ones claimed that they attacked? No. Do you know that great nation of Finland in 1939 attacked Soviet Union? because they were so provocative. They wanted to attack and damage Soviet interests. And Soviet Union had to defend itself, so we had to... Do you know who started Second World War, by the way? Do you know this is true story? Poles. Well, because this stupid Polish, as they were saying, the stupid, uncareful Poles, they attacked German radio station in territory of Germany by accident. 1 million strong German army was exercising at their borders. At that, just a few kilometers from there. So when these uncareful Poles attacked great nation of Germany, what was left to this great army but to return the fire? And by the way, they had also to occupy Poland. You know that in 2008, when we were all taking our holidays, by accident, great Russian army was exercising at Georgia's borders. 150,000 people. By another accident, 3 days earlier, Black Sea Fleet, when I was having holidays in Italy, left Crimea in Georgian direction. By another small coincidence, they blocked all our computer sites 2 days earlier, or 4 days earlier, I don't know, exact different data. All government sites were down. And then, after all these coincidences, these crazy Georgians entered sleeping town of Schinwali. That was by accident evacuated before that, 3 days earlier, because they didn't need people on the narrow mountainous road when tanks were entering. And what else was left to, by accident, exercising Russian army than to respond to with fire? They were shocked by and surprised by our arrogance. And they had to return fire. Exactly the same story as Poles at started Second World War. And there's always somebody like here, like in this audience, who to believe this crap and justify just anything. So what I advise you, never take anything at face value, you know what I'm telling you, but especially not what Russians are telling.
Okay. Okay, we'll take Mārtiņš, and then we have a question here.
Martin Hirsch, are there any dangers of Georgia becoming like Ukraine, that there's a small moment of pro-democracy movement and then backlash to authoritarianism?
Well, there is always a danger of setback. There is always a danger of setback. Right now, lots of Russian money is coming into our politics. But the good news is that, unlike Ukraine, we have no corruption. We have very strict financial controls for financing of political campaigns. We have, I think, good economic development, so that brings society behind the progress. Of course, we have, for the first time in several years, we have forces that openly advocate anti-NATO policies, that openly, not directly pro-Russian, but kind of hint at some kind of neutral type of policy, which basically means ending our independent policies. But I think Ukraine was a much more complex case. In Georgia's case, we are great survivors. We survived something that Afghans, Czechs, and Hungarians couldn't survive. So that's a big hope. So if that's the case, then we might survive also next way. But one thing is without and beyond any doubt that they certainly have. They will never leave us alone until they change themselves. Right now, it's really a kind of competition of models. In post-Soviet world, no other model can exist. Ukraine was another model. It's basically, they've created problems. Now the only one left, more or less, is Georgia. And so that puts us in tricky situation. But on the other hand, I think Ukraine will also be in better shape. It takes time. There are some certain difficulties, but it's nothing is, ultimately they are going in European direction. I'm totally confident. I'm totally confident that even Belarus is going in the European direction, Moldova for sure. And eventually Russia will also go to European direction. And from that point of view, there is no reversibility of history. There is always a setback of history. A setback of history can be very tragic for people living at the time of setback. So we will try to avoid that in our case.
Okay, Gunnar.
Yes, hello. First, such an honor and pleasure to have you here, so thank you. But my question is, do you feel or you already have felt any pressure from Russia in case of your becoming a NATO country?
Well, that's the only thing we feel in life. But you know, what happened now in Chicago? We had this summit, and I always see NATO summits as a chance, but I also see them as a risk, because in 2008, divided NATO in Bucharest generated partly the factors that facilitated, I wouldn't say directly caused, but facilitated Russian direct onslaught on our country. So from that point of view, I thought that Chicago summit was a risk, because if there had been some disunity, that would have emboldened them, because it's kind of deja vu for me. In 2008, we had elections in America, in Russia, in Georgia, and we had NATO summit, and we got war. We have exactly the same factors, and we don't want war this year. But what happened is that basically this time Georgia was absolute darling in Chicago. We were put in new category of countries together with other Balkan nations that are set to join. And they announced that next summit will be enlargement summit, and that Georgia qualifies for it. Or Georgia was mentioned among first like strong aspirants for this enlargement. It's a good thing, but that's a big challenge, because I heard it, we heard it, but they also heard it. And they know that time is short, because Medvedev said, by the way, you know why he said why 2008 wars happened? He said, these are his words, because it stopped NATO's enlargement to the east. So he explained why war happened in 2008. And they thought it was stopped for good. And look what happens. 4 years later, it was announced in Chicago that nothing is stopped. Everything can still go in right direction. And you know, that's a wake-up call for some people, I guess so. But what else? You know, we don't want to provoke anybody, but what is our choice? We don't want to do it against anybody. What is our choice? We don't want to, like, be always on the edge of survival battle and or fringes of whatever history. What is our choice? We need to survive. So we are a small nation in a very complicated geopolitical environment. And one thing we learned for all these years, that independence gives bonuses, and it gives really nice, good things. And we don't want to give it up. Some people think that our independence is an accident, that that should be terminated quite soon, not to spoil us and not to spoil other people. So yes, it's a tricky situation, and we'll try to overcome it as always, and I'm sure we will. But again, that's an eternal optimist speaking in me.
Okay, thank you. Baiba. I think you have to turn it on.
I have a question regarding corruption. You mentioned very low levels. How you could explain non-existent corruption in Georgia? Because the low levels of corruption have to be something like bottom-up thing, not top-down thing. Actually, is it due to some repressive methods or due to some local culture?
No, well, first of all, I thank you for the question. And by the way, I was afraid it's the last. Sorry, I've heard the last question because we have to leave. I'm so terribly sorry, but I'll respond at left to this one. Well, first of all, one thing Georgia learned, and I think shared with the others, that there is nothing inherited cultural about corruption. You know, World Bank just did a book on Georgia solving election corruption problem. And they said that they told to us, and this was book presented not only in Washington with like great trumpeting and advertising, but it was presented to multiple governments in Africa, Asia, and even in Western Europe, including, say, Swiss government on their request. And the World Bank told me that they've written in the past several books on corruption issues in different countries. First time ever in history that they write a book about solving the problem of corruption. And they were saying in the preface that, you know, Georgia broke this idea that corruption is cultural, because really the idea was that especially southern countries, and it's true also about southern part of Europe, the perception was that they're inherently inefficient, they're inherently corrupt. This was the stereotype that's still around. I mean, there was a big fight recently between Lagarde, the IMF chief, and Greek government, because that's essentially what she tried to say or imply about Greece, with or without reason. But basically, that's how they saw the things. So from that point of view, Georgia was hopeless, because we liked, according to popular perception, not to work too much. We like to have something in the shadow always. But shadow economy in Georgia is less than 4% now. Less than Belgium has 10. When I became president, since then, our economy grew almost 4 times in nominal terms. But but with GDP growth, our budget went up something like 25, 27 times, with the fact that we decreased taxes 60%. So it's exactly index of legalized economy, of diminished corruption. We did also repressive methods, yes, repressive in terms of legality, but in terms of going after corrupt people. But mostly it was a combination of several factors. For instance, all new buildings in Georgia built new buildings almost for all government, civil service, judiciary, police, prosecutors, local governments. They are all transparent, all glass. Before they were just Soviet buildings, Raikom, Tseka, etc. We don't have any of them left. We just opened 3 days ago new, amazingly beautiful, big glass parliament in another city of Georgia, Kutaisi. So glass, transparent. It has some psychology to it. We also had amazing, in terms of change of police, because what we did, we fired the entire police force, and what happened? It was before summer. So everybody thought crime rate would go up, and everybody thought traffic accidents would kill lots of people. In fact, traffic accidents increased just slightly, crime rate went down. We had for 4 months no police force in country, no, 0. Well, what discovered that police was part of the problem, not the solution. And so when we did, what we did is recruited entirely new young people without experience, gave them new uniforms, they never had real uniforms, gave them cars, they never had cars. Policemen in Georgia had to drive their own cars, and they never got salaries because they had to extort money and give them to their superiors. So we gave them new uniforms, new cars, new buildings, new weapons, whatever, pistols, and the main thing we gave them is respect. Previous police force was trusted by 5% of society, and new one is trusted by 90%. The previous one was hated, this one is loved. And according to all the polls recently we have from Gallup, from IRI, etc. Which means that if you have respect, then you also have your framework. You don't want to lose respect. It looks like you cannot buy it, but you will do just anything not to lose it. It's a social control that matters much more than, you know, going just after corrupt people. Salaries matter, but you can never give enough salaries to be non-corrupt. And what matters most is dedicated big group of committed reformers that believe that no matter what, they should make it. They should make it, they should get it, they should achieve what seems almost unachievable. And that's ultimately, there is no blueprint. You cannot apply just, okay, this is a scheme, that's how we do it. You just believe in it. It's all about faith, not about only rationale. And from that point of view, we were blessed with this kind of group because we were, I guess, in such bad conditions that we had nothing to lose. Right now, we are under such existential threat that either we have to outperform everybody or we can lose everything. So, you know, this kind of things might help, but when you are under such threat, it's not the time to scream and say, especially in democracy, oh, we are under threat, leave us alone. Don't ask for freedom, don't ask for, freedom of rally, freedom of speech, freedom of whatever, shut up everybody, follow the great leader, we are under threat. No, that's the way leading nowhere. We should have freedom, we should have openness, we should have transparency, but we should call for it. We should understand that, that we should just move very fast, not stay in place and say, okay, leave us alone, we cannot move anywhere because we are under threat. On the contrary, when they are trying to get you, when they are trying to annihilate you, should all the time move forward. Maybe they can escape from there. But in the right direction. So that's more or less what I can say. But ultimately, as I said, I've been maybe boasting a little bit here, but also your country is worth admiration. And I know how complex the issues are. And no matter what, like every time we achieve something, and we achieved everything we are dreaming about, and suddenly there are new challenges, and it's never enough. But it's another qualitatively different challenge. And still you are at the stage when your nationhood is secure, more or less, and your long-term future is secure, more or less, again. We are still not there. But we want to get there because you are already here, and that's already very encouraging for us. In any case, unfortunately, I have to run back because otherwise, you know that, as I said, I told so many scary things about my country that I got scared myself. So I had to go back and take care of the challenges. But otherwise, it was very happy to see you. All the best. I wish you, daring success in what you are doing. I invite all of you to encourage you, all of you, to visit Georgia. You'll be amazed how special that country is. And let's stay in touch. Thank you.